It is a extremely wonderful pleasure and a historic occasion for a career. I hope, Montek, can you hear me? I can hear you. Okay, great. This is a unique occasion because for us and to commemorate Isha's contribution and the legacy she has left, our opportunity to name the building after her is the most suitable way any of us could think about actually preserving her legacy and providing a testament to her. I'll talk later about that, but what I'd like to do is invite Montek to unveil the plaque at this point in time and have it show the name of the building. Montek, standing right behind you, if you could unveil the plaque. And then I would ask you, please, to say a few words, followed by some other people who I would really appreciate if they could individually say a few words on as well. I will call on them. How wonderful, Montek. Thank you. I would tell you, I know the font appears light at this point in time, but it was selected jointly with the family after much debate and much effort. And I'm delighted that it is now open and the building has been named after Isha Judge Ahluwalia. And we honestly believe that with this, we will build a career into the foremost economic think tank, exactly what she would have loved, and with the dreams that she had. Montek, may I turn it over to you to say a few words, and then I'll ask a few others to do so.
Thank you very much, Pramod. We're there. I think I'm going to start from the beginning again, okay? So as I was saying earlier, it's a very moving occasion for me and family to be here. And the most important thing for me to say is to thank the ICRIA board, and most of all, whoever first thought of the idea of naming this building the Isha building. You know, when you wrote to me saying that that's what the board had decided, I mean, Isha was not well at all, but when I conveyed this to her, I could see that she was deeply touched, and that was really nice. I don't think there was anything at that point that would have meant more to her than this decision. Now, I think you all know that ICRIA meant a lot to Isha. So anything I say would just be adding a few words, but there are 3 or 4 things that I do want to mention. First, you know, she was deeply convinced of the importance of policy-related work informing the government of India, or any government for that matter, and very convinced that the only way this could be done is if the research institutions were independent. So it is not good enough to say, oh yes, we are doing a lot of research, either in this ministry or that ministry. Even commissioning research is a good thing, but that's not the same thing as an independent institution putting out its own thing and not actually counting on the official establishment to approve of its work, but rather the profession at large. She was very, very convinced of this. When we both came back in 1979, she was also offered jobs in government, and she consciously decided not to take them because she felt there's enough economists in government. It's not clear to her, by the way, that the government actually listened to its economists. But the best thing she felt was needed is economists outside government. So people could look and say, well, listen, this institution is saying this, what are you doing? So, I mean, I'm sure that, I know that she worked a lot to encourage researchers in ICRIA and the institution. And I'm pretty sure that she'd be proud of what you've been doing since she was chairperson. And certainly while she was chairperson, I know that she took a lot of interest in the work that ICRIA was doing. So that's the first point. I want to make. The second is, she didn't just start with ICRIA and go all the way to the top. I mean, she saw ICRIA in different forms. First, as a researcher, it was her first job in India. And her very first book, which was an important book, was actually done under a research grant given by what was then called SCRIA. And Dr. K.B. Lal was then the head of SCRIA. I see that Rajiv Lal is, at least a portrait of him is on the video. So Rajiv, if you're there, I'm just saying hello.
Very good.
Good. That was what she did as a researcher. Then she was offered a professorship in the Center for Policy Research. She left. Then she was brought back as chief executive of ICRIA when I.G. Patel was chairperson. So she served as chief executive for a fair amount of time. And then sort of I went off because I got a job in the IMF. And she sort of didn't really want to leave her job, but she said, okay, I have one more year of things to complete and I'll join you in Washington, D.C. after that. And then she gave it up and left. She was quite sad at leaving because, I mean, ICRIA, she'd spent a lot of her time in ICRIA. And in Washington, actually, she learned a bit about what it means to be chairperson of a research institution because she became chairperson, or she was elected chairperson of the Food Policy Research Institute, IFPRI. I think at that time, Ashok Gulati, who is part of the ICRIA family now, was in IFPRI. And, when the board elected her to be the next chairperson, she said she was really impressed by how seriously they took it, because they actually hired an HR firm to come and brief the new elected chairperson what is the role of the chairperson, and essentially to establish that the chairperson is not meant to interfere with the management of the institution, but has other and very distinct roles, outward projection, this sort of stuff. So she felt that, this is something that would be useful for her if she ever got back. And as luck would have it, I mean, I did return, Isha came back with me, and very soon after that, the chairpersonship of ICRIA became vacant. So having been a professor and been director, she was then made chairperson of ICRIA. And I recall that a lot of what she learned about how to be chairperson of IFPRI is something you should try to apply in her chairpersonship of ICRIA. And the last thing I want to mention is that after she passed away, I mean, I received a number of, the usual condolence messages, including many from ICRIA staff. But I was really struck by the fact that a very large number of younger women wrote saying they remembered that she was there when they were there, and some of them had left ICRIA, and how encouraging she was of women researchers. So, these were really touching messages. So, Pramod, thank you very much. It's really, I don't think you could have thought of a better way of honoring and remembering Isha. Putting this name up here. So, thank you. Thank you all.
Yes. Montek, it's such a pleasure, and thank you. And now, okay, Nitin, you're there already. I was going to call NK first, but please go ahead if you're there, Nitin. And then NK, may I turn to you for a few comments. Montek, thank you for that speech. I'm glad it touched you. I'm glad it's moved all of us, I must tell you, and it'll move everyone at ICRIA. It's been absolutely marvelous to be able to do this, and it's a privilege for me. Sorry, Nitin, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Well, Montek, Aman, and I think Pawan, really is a wonderful day for us in ICRIA. And let me just say that we are dedicating this building to Isha. Let me tell you, this building would not be there if it were not for Isha. She's the person who's really responsible for this building being there at all, in all ways. When we started, we had this plot of land. We didn't know how we could do anything with it. And she's the one who organized everything about it. Initially, the raising of the resources. And incidentally, when she raised the resources, she was very clear. She didn't want one person or two people to finance this. And she put in a restriction saying that not more than 1 crore for one person. And I think about 20 odd people have contributed to this. Their names are up there. And her whole point was that this should be our building, not somebody else's building. And this was very typical of her attitude to keeping the independence of ICRIER. But it was more than that. The whole process of getting this building done, including this terrible last phase when we had to get the permission of all the municipal authorities, which is a point at which she put me into the process also. But she was really very dedicated and diligent. And frankly, this building has to be named after her. It would not be there had it not been for her. But her contribution to ICRIER is more than just this building. When she was, I was not there when she was the director, but I was with her on the board throughout. And it's during this period that ICRIER expanded its scope of work into areas like digital technology. Rajat is here. He's also very involved in that. And also on climate and urbanization. As you know, Isher chaired the committee which looked into the urban infrastructure side. And she brought all that also into this. And you also mentioned the way in which she handled her relationship with the staff. She really took serious interest in every aspect of ICRIER's work. And we would not be where we are today had it not been for the effort that she put into this. So it's very absolutely appropriate that we should be naming this building the Isher building. And she will be there in our thoughts, in our future, if you like, forever, because of the enormous amount of effort that she put into building up this institution. So again, Montek, Aman, Pawan, let me just say, just see how much we appreciate what your wife, what your mother did for all of us. And this is how we will remember her always. Thank you very much for being here, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Nitin. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. May I now call upon NK, who's on the screen here virtually, to say a few words, please.
Well, thank you very much, Pramod. It's really a privilege for me to be part of today's function for many reasons, some of which Montek has brought out and Nitin has mentioned one or two aspects. My association, and since we talk of buildings, and since Rajiv is also here, he will know that my association with ICRIER began from its very inception when late Dr. K.B. Lal returned back to India, and it struck him that India needed a high-quality research organization. And look at the distance we have traveled. ICRIER began, in a way, from a Barsati on top of the IIC, for those who will remember, or from where ICRIER began. And from there, from the IIC Barsati, so to say, it began in a tentative way when Dr. Lal wanted to emphasize the international aspects of our missing links in our economic policy. Thereafter, of course, he did engage with me and late Amarnath Verma, who was of great, enormous help. And then, of course, Isher was already someone which Montek has very correctly pointed out, with whom Dr. Lal interacted at that time. Since that time, I think that the three dominant things, and it went over a long period from Dr. Lal's time, there were other chairpersons. And of course, I recall that late Dr. I.G. Patel gave enormous impetus to the work of ICRIER. And Isher was the guiding spirit. I was privileged to be part of the board when Dr. Patel was the chairman, and Isher was at that time, the soul behind really ICRIER. There were three important things which were dominant in Isher's mind. First and foremost, she recognized that India needed not only high quality research organizations, but India needed independent research organizations. Independent meant, to give an anecdotal example of how much Isha valued independence of organization. Initially, when it was struggling for funds, the Department of Economic Affairs had made a very modest endowment of some very small sum of money. I think, if I recall, it was 25 lakhs of rupees or so. But in lieu of that, they were wanting to audit it in a manner which would really seriously impinge on the autonomy of the organization. Isha's reaction was, we must find other ways of doing so. She said goodbye to that endowment from the economic independence and financial independence of organization, and manner in which the funds are not tied to end objectives was central to her objective of fostering independent research organization. The second important dimension that Isha brought is those of us who know from the inception, it was primarily an organization on international trade. Isha had the vision to broaden and diversify the reach of ICRIER to many other aspects of economic policy, including important areas of macroeconomic policy. If we look at the kind of people whom she, year after year, she invited for functions from ICRIER, you will find the diversity which ICRIER was able to achieve during her stewardship of ICRIER. The third, of course, which I recognize, is the fact that Isha was one of the classic people who said, never give up. Nitin has alluded to some of the things. I mentioned that because when this land was to be purchased and when the building was to really come up, the number of difficulties of the number of regulatory hurdles, not the least of which was the hurdle from the fire certification process. At one stage, the entire architectural drawings, the staircase, all that needed to be redone. It needed costs. And one more aspect of it, Isha was not without either contacts or without friends in important position. Isha was one of the rare people who never for once wanted to use her personal influence in being able to tilt a regulatory approval one way or the other. This was quite consistent with a broader philosophy on the independence of research organization. It is indeed a marvelous commitment, dedication, and a spirit of never give up. And if today we have this building, which we see before us, this marvelous structure, which Montek has very kindly unveiled, it is a reminder of the long journey which Isha's toiled in multiple ways. Isha never suffered from any aspect of ego problems, if I may use that expression. She would be willing to talk to any soul who would be really in some way helpful towards getting one approval or the other, using her persuasive abilities in trying to tilt a decision in ICRIER's favor. If this building has been named the Isha building, or the Ahluwalia building, frankly speaking, we have not only done justice to her sustained commitment, but we have done justice to all the values she stood for. The values of research organizations, the values of independence of research organizations, the value of this country needing organizations which are truly independent of influences which often corrode the credibility of the proceedings and the credibility of whatever the writings are. She had a view on what researchers in ICRIER should do and a view on how their research should be recognized in more ways than one. And I think that balancing out the appropriateness and reaching the perfect kind of an equilibrium in terms of the independence of research also, which she promoted, was remarkable to Isha. I recall many, many days with warmth, her affection, which was so endearing, even as she unveiled one step after another in this daunting challenge, whose final outcome we see today. We miss her personal presence today, but her spirit will be the dominant factor to guide us today, to guide successive generations of what ICRIA stands for and what Isha stood for. Thank you very much, Pramod, for this opportunity to say a few words and the privilege that I have in being able to associate myself with today's events. Thank you.
Incredible eloquence and incredibly moving, NK. Thank you very much. Both you and Montek there, Montek, of course, unveiling the plaque, and your words are just so incredibly important to all of us. With that, I'm going to move forward, if I may, and then come the wonderful words, NK. I can't thank you enough for that. And of course, all of us will remember these for a very long time and the legacy that we need to live up to. I'm going to surprise someone who's there and who's not expecting this. Pallavi, may I ask you to say a few words? She's not ready for this, and I'm trying to send messages to lots of people to say, please warn her. But Pallavi, if you could say a few words, I know it's unprepared, but would be great. No audio.
You really caught me off guard on this one.
I'm
completely. Oh God. Anyway, I think everybody who's spoken before me has said so many words eloquently about her Isha and ICRIA and her whole career with ICRIA and how she's actually lived, and ICRIA has lived the values that she stood for, and how she's brought this institution up like her own child, literally. I think ICRIA would have been the third child after Pavan and Aman, literally. And that's what I know. And that's how I know Isha. And if I stand here, just close my eyes and I look at her name, her vision stands in front of me with her mop of white silver hair, her most elegant silk sari, and that most charismatic smile. She moving amongst all of us, wishing us and talking to us. And you can almost feel her presence here, even though she's not physically present with us. She will always remain in our heart and souls. She was one of the warmest and the most down-to-earth person that I have come across. Her friendship was forever. And I remember how she took me out for lunch one day and told me, you have to join ICRIA, and I cannot take no for an answer. Before I could blink, the papers came home and she called me and said, sign. So that was Isha for you. And I do remember so many lunches at India International Center that she and I would have discussing so many things about women's issues and how I would do it in the office, how she would do it in ICRIA, so many issues about the economy and what's happening around us. And they were the most glorious lunches that I've had. And Montek, I cannot even forget the beautiful garden lunches that I've had with Isha and you, several afternoons, my fresh vegetables from my garden and Isha making them. Those are memories that will live forever. And I'm sure that each one of us present here today have the same memories and similar memories of Isha's warmth enveloping each one of us in our lives. Thank you.
Pallavi, I knew I could catch you off guard and still you would be so wonderful and spoken from the heart. Absolutely wonderful of you, Pallavi. Thank you. And I hope you'll forgive me for surprising you like this one of these days, although I suspect I may have to pay for it in a variety of ways. But you spoke from the heart, and, to say it's like her own child is exactly right. With that, may I just turn to one more person? And Pavan or Aman, would you like to say a few words, anyone? and then we'll come to the close. Unless somebody else wishes to say something, if you want to raise a hand.
I think it'd be wonderful for anyone who wants to speak. So I'll keep this very brief. I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of all of us. You know, ideas and the policy debate were a big part of my mother's life, as was the institution building at ICRIA. But the one thing I learned about her, especially in the last months when she was working on the book, and then, you know, as her health grew steadily worse, we had to really take dictation and really help her complete the book. And what I learned at that time was just how important the people in her life were to her. And I think she would have been delighted, obviously, at the success that ICRIA has achieved, at how what a fantastic job Pramod has done, and you know, ensuring that the high institutional standards have continued, that this building, which she worked so hard on, has finally come to fruition. But I think she would have been even happier just to see this gathering of people all here, all together. And that, I think, is what's most special, at least to me today. So thank you all for making the time. Thank you for coming here and making this just a wonderful moment for us to commemorate my mother's memory.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. Before I do go forward with my closing words, in case anybody else wanted to say something, I can't see everybody on the screen.
Pramod, I'd like to say a few words, if I
Kiran,
may.
please. Wonderful to have you.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say that, you know, I owe my presence in ICRIA to Ishar. I mean, Ishar, as you know, was synonymous with ICRIA. And she was so passionate about ICRIA that she just sort of was made it absolutely important to include whom she felt could add value to ICRIA. Now, whether I added the right value or not remains to be seen, but I can tell you that, you know, Ishar has just been an amazing, amazing force of nature. And I think the way she has built ICRIA, we have a huge, enormous responsibility to build on her legacy. And I'm really, really so delighted that we commemorated and dedicated this building in her memory, because I think she will be there with us forever. And, you know, having Montek and the family with us today was extra special. You know, you almost feel like, you know, Ishar is with us listening to all these words. And I just feel really, really good about, you know, just being part of this function today. Thank you.
Thank you, Kiran. Thank you so much. I don't know if anybody else wanted to say anything. Be happy.
If I can just jump in.
Naina, please.
Yeah. Just to really thank you and ICRIA for doing this, gracing Ishar. All of us have clearly engaged with ICRIA because of Ishar. And Montek, Aman, Pavan, from my end, my interest in the urban environment and a lot of my thinking on water and sanitation has been deeply influenced by some of the work Ishar herself led, and from her early days, some of the conversations that I've had. So the influence that she has extends in many, many ways, in many, many spaces. And as you well know, she's going to be much missed by many of us. So thank you for giving us Ishar. Thank you for being there for this very important event. And thanks, Pramod, for giving me the opportunity to share a little bit with everyone here.
Absolutely, Naina. Thank you. Anyone else?
Something, Pramod? This is Rajat. I'm an outsider, but I'd really like to say something.
You are not allowed to say you're an outsider.
Well, I'm not, but I really want to say something.
Right. You're not an outsider.
Well, Ishar, looking, as Pawan said, probably looking down at this gathering, the intellectual board that has been gathered here, she probably enjoying this very much, I hope, from up there. Montek, Pawan, Amam, the family, Pramod, board members, and everyone who has contributed to I just wanted to say that the 10 years or 8 years as director, I in a career, little more than 8 years, 6 years were devoted, I think, to building affairs, not exclusive, but a large extent. And, Ishar was always there, as everybody has said, so I won't repeat the things that everybody has said. Ishar meant all of that, not only to Ikriar, but to me personally. And the platform she provided, she enabled, she facilitated, is something that I would never forget in my life. Whatever I think I have achieved in terms of public presence, I acknowledge not only to Ikriar, but also to Ishar's sort of constant support. And I used to always say, and I wrote this in the tribute I paid to her, that I didn't think I belonged there in conferences and platforms that she wanted to present Ikriar in. But she always persuaded me, and she said, no, you belong there. You're just a little diffident, but you very much belong there. And I'm so happy she did that. Otherwise, I would have always been behind the scenes and never appearing sort of up front. The second thing, I think a couple of things that I think bear repetition is the fact that I think this building, the finances of this building have been raised completely unilaterally by Ishar. She used to, as Pallavi said, persuade people. I remember in board meetings, Uday, you have to give 1 crore. And Uday said, sure. Nandan, 1 crore. And so on, and Pramod. The money would come. So I think finance isn't a constraint for the building, and neither was it for research in some sense, because she used to always say, if you have a good project, I will get you the funding. If you have a good idea, I will get you the funding. And Montek, you asked this question right in the beginning. Whose idea was this to name the building after Ishar? I think it was one of the last meetings where Pramod was elected the chairperson. It was Pramod's idea. I think it was the last board meeting or the society meeting where Pramod said, how about we name the building after Ishar? And I think that's a great thought, a great idea, because it devoted her life, at least the life that I come of Ikriar was in her DNA, completely in her DNA. And I miss Ishar a lot. I think about her a lot. I'm in my new assignment and doing some policy related work. I really do think about Ishar. And I remember that in one of the conversations I was having with her in the office, there were so many sides of her that came out through simple conversations, as somebody just said about women. And Radhika is here, and she used to always tell me that, you have to give Radhika the flexibility. If she's going to have a child, give her the flexibility. And we always did that. And Radhika contributed disproportionately. And there were so many like that who contributed disproportionately. Nisha, Shaun, Arpita. And women always got her support, always, 100% of her support. She never sort of grudged them an additional sort of benefit in terms of leaves or working from home. Working from home was always allowed for women, clear, always allowed, even before the pandemic, and it was Ishar's doing. I mean, there's so many things, her attention to detail. She used to tell, put my name on this paper because I don't think it's her attention to detail. Last thing, her attention to detail. The courtyard in there had a couple of platforms, and I'm not going to talk about our architect. We just got a bad draw. I think it was just a bad draw, but he had built a platform here which had 2 huge steps, and it would have made no sense for that space to be occupied by a platform because it would be useless and you wouldn't be able to do anything. She came one day and said, this has to go, and it went. And now you have this beautiful courtyard there where you can have tea and dinner or lunch parties, which I'm sure are already being used. And then we dismantle something to create something for the staff where they could sit. And I'm told that staff really enjoy sitting there because a beautiful space has been created, and there are some, pieces and good plants lying there. And all this is a legacy of Ishar. The plants that you see here through Pramod's help, the plants that you see inside, these were all handpicked. The furniture, the cane furniture, these were all handpicked by Ishar. That's the attention to detail that she provided to this building, and I think to ICRIER as an institution. And I think ICRIER owes a lot to her, and I personally owe a lot to her. So thank you, Montek, for this.
Thank you, Rajat. Thank you very much. I don't know if Ashok Gulati is on, but he had said he will try and get on. He and Uday are at the Kotak board meetings, which are happening. So I'm not sure if he's on. I don't think he is. But if he's not, and there's no one else who wishes to speak,
so
perhaps
Pramod,
Rajiv, please.
Wanted to, on a slightly lighter note, I just wanted to say that whoever's idea it was to call it just the Isher building is absolutely brilliant. So the Isher building has a real ring to it, and I think this will resonate for the rest of our lives. So thank you very much, and thank you very much for having me today.
Well, I'll talk about how we got to that name with the help of everyone. There's someone else with a mic. I can't identify who they are on the screen, but please go ahead.
Kirit Parikh. Yeah. You know, I will tell.
How are you, sir?
I'll tell you something that perhaps nobody knows. I was in 97, 98 at United Nations in New York with UNDP, spending a year there as a senior economic advisor to the administrator. And one day I get a call from Isha. She says, I'm in New York. Are you free for lunch? And we went out at lunch, and she said, you know, IG Patel has asked me to take over ICRIER. Should I do this? I said, certainly, of course you must do that. They can't find anyone better. And then she asked me whether, you know, you had built up IGIDR, what kind of tips you would like to give me in doing this. Now, I'm sure she didn't learn much, but it shows her willingness to talk to people and trying to get whatever she can from them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for this wonderful testament, which with the closing, and now, if you allow me a few closing words, and then we'll move forward. I want to say that after this, we will have some snacks being served in the atrium area and the open area, out here. And we will also have some videos running, which gives the name of the founders and the people who funded the building, as well as the testaments we have received from everyone about how wonderful they feel that this building has been named after Isher, and how they really believe, exactly as Pallavi said, and Pallavi, your words were fantastic. It was like her own child, and perhaps her children will understand that best. And Montek, of course, that this was a child that she was looking after so wonderfully well, despite all the problems. She pulled me in as well when the architect had gone awry, the staircases weren't working, the fire certification wasn't coming through, and 50 other things were happening. And then with determination and grit, we all got together, Nitin and NK and everybody, and we solved for these issues. In my view, in my words, she was brilliant, she was charismatic, she was a natural leader, and she was a humanitarian. Individually, she was personally so charismatic and warm. And as everybody has said, she was an unstoppable force. Montek and NK don't realize that I owe my entire career to them. I've told them this because I came here at the same time when India was opening up the economic reform, and I came here with GE Capital, and Montek and NK, as part of the FIPB board, and Montek was chairing it, gave us approval to set that up, and that set us on our way. I am always daunted by the illustrious predecessors that have gone ahead at ICRIER. NK, you talked about many of them. Montek, you've talked about many of them. Mr. KB Lal, IG Patel, A.N. Verma, so many others, and yourselves, and so many people we have here on the call. with Mr. Mashelkar and so many others on the general board. And I want to talk very briefly about what that legacy means to us and what we will promise and dedicate ourselves to as we go forward. I do want to say a few things about the building. So the idea of naming the building came from Janaki Katspalya. And she told that to me, and I then brought it up to the board. So much as I would love to take credit for it, I'm afraid I cannot, because she really brought it up once she resigned and wanted to do anything and said, let's do that. And Rajiv, to your point, do we call it the Ishar building, the Ishar Judge Ahluwalia building, the Ishar Ahluwalia building? We went back and forth with Montek, Pawan, Aman a number of times. And fortunately, we all settled on the Ishar building, which was my first choice as well, because we thought it felt natural and it would be perfect. It's a historic and very emotional day, but it's a true day that signifies the strength of ICRIA. I have been astonished at how strong this institution is, how much its people love the place. Despite all the turmoil we have gone through, there have been times, you must be aware, when we have worried about how do we pay salaries the next month. But every single individual person in the organization has stood up and been counted. Rajat was there in those days, Deepak is there now, and yet through thick and thin, when it has threatened their own existence, through COVID, which has hit all of us very hard, and so many people at ICRIA were down, the organization had withstood. There is no better testament to a leader than to have created that form of loyalty and that love for working in this organization. It is completely unique. I have worked in many organizations. I know how difficult it is to build that culture, and you build it not just with brilliance and intellect, but you build it with love and care and a deep, deep rooted sense of wanting the good for everyone that works there. I don't want to go on forever, but I will say this. We dedicate and commit ourselves to carrying forward her legacy here at Saket, as well as the ICRIA building at the India Habitat Center. We want to be an independent economic think tank, very impactful on issues that really matter today in this government and today to policymakers in this world, in our country, as well as around the world, that are far-reaching both for the private sector, the public sector, for multilateral institutions, that are approaching and tackling the issues that face us all, whether it's climate change, whether it's in the agricultural sector, whether it's in digitalization, whether it's in startup, whether it's in innovation, whether it's in economic policy and trade. But most of all, I hope we will be known as an institution for the culture that it has, for the history that it has had, that we are dedicated to living up to, for the women at ICRIA. I want to say that because it is a wonderful place, and Deepak said it earlier, we have the best record on the number of women in ICRIA of any think tank anywhere in the world, and that is something we would love to continue, and we will make sure we continue. And we hope we will make you all very, very proud of what ICRIA started and what we will complete. As many people said, she is here with us in presence, in mind, in her soul, and with all of us in our hearts, because this building and ICRIA would not exist without her. Montek, Pawan, Aman, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time. And to everyone else as part of our AGM who have been so wonderful, thank you very much for taking the time. I can think of no better way to dedicate this than to name this building after her. Thank you very much. And with that, I'll hand it back to Deepak. There are some snacks, there are some videos. Thank you. And God bless everyone. And a good evening.